Well, that was eminently predictable. Something like 6 years after its announcement and one developer yeeted off the game later, Bloodlines 2 drops and proves to be an immense fiasco. The game peaked out at 20,000 players tops and is sitting at an, if anything, overly generous mixed reviews score on Steam. At the very most, this game sold maybe 100,000 copies, which, after a half-a-decade-long development cycle, will have left Paradox deep in the proverbial hole. But the sheer scale of the failure was perhaps somewhat more difficult to predict, as after 20 plus hours of playing this misfigured abomination, I can quite confidently say I would rather drown in a mound of my own fecal discharge than ever do so again. As this is not merely not a Bloodlines game, it is not an RPG. It is not a game about vampires, and it certainly is not a World of Darkness game. Facts that all merely rub additional salt into the bleeding anal fissure that is this game's design, as I do not believe that in all my years of gaming I've ever seen a bigger fuck you and your extended family than in one particular moment in this game, where all you have to do is enter an elevator and go down to the basement of the Glacier Hotel, only to have the Fag Ferratu, one of many weapons-grade unlikable characters in the game, halt your ass mid-step and dispatch you on not one, not two, but 3 inane, pointless fetch quests, mercilessly padding 30 minutes onto what was a 5-minute quest. And when you do get in the elevator, the fucking control panel starts talking to you, arguing with you, and refusing to simply go down, plapping on another few torturous minutes to the unrelenting rape session that is this 30-second long quest. There were guards at Auschwitz that were less sadistically perverse than whatever pseudo-human-shaped pile of unreasoning hatred that wrote this. But I'm getting off track. Before we cover the story, let's talk about game mechanics. Firstly, I would love to visit the alternate reality that whoever decided to slap the RPG label on this game must be from, because it has got to be the likes of the world of the moral reversal manga, where up is down and women act like men, because not even with all the goodwill in the world could you ever possibly call this a role-playing game. On a simple mechanical basis, Bloodline 2 has tossed out not even just practically, but literally every single mechanic from 1. There is no inventory, there are no items, there is no equipment. You can't even pick up weapons beyond telekinesing them to toss or fire them once. There isn't even a humanity system in-game anymore. Or blood points, really. The closest you get to anything even remotely resembling an RPG system are potions, of which there are 4. A blood potion to replenish your mana, by the way, that you cannot store and is locked to skills. So if a skill costs 3 blood points, that does not mean you can use it 3 times for 1 blood point each. It means you have to get 3 blood points to use it once. And you cannot ever have more than 3 points for that skill. So you get to use it once. And then you need to bite 3 enemies to get 1 more use out of it. The second potion is a straightforward healing potion, which you are going to need because your elder vampire's greatest fear is a fucking thin blood with a shotgun. You also get a punch harder potion and a stay hard Viagra potion. These paltry 4 items is Bloodline 2's only concession to the RPG genre. In other words, Bloodlines 2 is as much of an RPG as Call of Duty. Actually, wait, no. Allow me to correct myself. COD is more of an RPG because in COD you can pick up guns and carry them around with you. Hell, the Call of Duty perk tree is probably at least comparable to the skills branch in Bloodlines 2. And it truly is a branch, a collection of branches, a bundle of sticks, a vertical faggot, you might even say, as you get 4 abilities. And you can only ever have 4 abilities selected. If you want to use another one, you must replace it with from the same branch. No mixing and matching here. And if you desire abilities outside of your starting clan, then you're going to have to grind for it. Both XP-based levels and color-coded blood. If you want all of the abilities, you are going to need to suckle on hundreds of people. Not to mention grinding XP like crazy, as the game features nowhere near the number of quests required to unlock everything. And considering the game's writing, that might be a blessing in disguise. But have no fear. It's not like you need to, because beyond the pay-to-play abilities, there are no stats in the game. Not a single one. There is no strength stat, there is no dexterity, no abilities like sneak or guns or lockpicking. Even the dialogue options, what paltry few there are, have no skill checks or abilities to get different responses or answers based on skills. Now, I will in part defend the devil here when it comes to the abject lack of RPG mechanics. The new developers, after Hardsuit Labs were unceremoniously tossed onto the developer dung heap, are the Chinese Room. And they, quite simply, don't make RPGs. They never have. They make walking simulators. They were indeed the origins of the walking simulator Dear Esther back in the day. And they clearly had zero interest to expand beyond their particular wheelhouse with this title. But Paradox would of course have known this. And there are even rumors, just rumors mind you, that the Chinese Room did not want to make an RPG at all. Instead, they wanted to make a strictly narrative experience in the VTM setting, but not a Bloodlines game. And they wanted to switch the name to reflect this. Supposedly then, Paradox told them no, and told them to keep the name Bloodlines 2. And I can absolutely see that happening, as Paradox had already poured a lot of time and money and prestige into this project, and renaming it now would be nothing short of a disaster. Not to mention, in essence, an open admission that Bloodlines 2 was as dead and ruined as a roadkill so flat it's become one with the asphalt. And we can also see hints of this in the game itself, as we now move on to the story. And yes, this video will contain spoilers for what some ass gnome with no conceptualization of what a pen, paper, or writing is. Yet still, he would refer to this as a story. You start the game as a recently awoken elder vampire, or so at least the game vociferously claims, but provides no evidence in support of. Your elder vampire has all the combat potential of a plastic shopping bag filled with crumbled up crackers. Your supposedly elder vampire can and will be manhandled by ghouls armed with sticks and kitchen cutlery. And to further illustrate your remarkable lack of offensive force, Thin Bloods, the lowest of the vampiric lows, literal cum-stained trailer park toilet paper stuck to the shoes of vampire society, signs of the weakening of the blood and the beginning of the end times. Well, in this game, they fulfilled the role of heavy special enemies. Oh yeah, a Thin Blood with a hammer will crush you like a bug, while soaking up a dozen of elder vampire punches like you're pelting him with strawberries. And worse still, the fact that you are a neutered failure of a vampire, ranking significantly lower on the power charts than the fledgling from the first game, is apparently something that is known to just everyone. All the other vampires you interact with treat you with precisely zero deference. If you're very lucky and very submissive, making them like you whenever possible, they might treat you like an equal. But even then, the characters will eagerly send you off on idiotic fetch quests far beneath your status. At one point, the Fagferatu Tolly, whose clan specializes in infiltration, sends you to infiltrate the police station and tells you explicitly that he could do it easily himself, but he's choosing to send you purely to fuck with you. Forget respect. The characters treat you like a doormat, like a random irrelevancy that dragged its fetish carcass onto their collective carpets. Even the new prince of the city, Ryong, makes you the sheriff not because you're capable, but because, as far as we can tell, you are literally the only option she has. And incidentally, I mentioned if you were adequately submissive, the characters might like you. That is true. If you kiss sufficient ass, if you deep throat enough domineering inferior vampire phalluses, they will at least treat you with a modicum of decency. But that is all, by the way. The little pop-ups in the top corner going, oh, that character didn't like that, or oh, the character was quite tickled by this, has absolutely no consequences whatsoever beyond dialogue tone. As the actual end story of the game, the end of it all, is determined by two actions in total. So feel free to be a massive dick if you so choose. Now, yet again, I will defend the devil to a point here, as the Chinese Room are bound by the new World of Darkness law. As Paradox, of course, now owns that new version and therefore wants all of their companies to push it, even at the complete exclusion of the far better law. And the new World of Darkness is, of course, as inescapable as the sunrise ass. WOD is taking the same reaming to the butthole that most major franchises have been taking these last few years. And if anything, this company has even been more political than usual. And so, in the new version, the idea of power structures need to be constantly critiqued and mocked. Therefore, the usual respect and just simple fear with which any vampire would treat an elder is non-existent now. And let me stress, the sheer sphincter puckering panic panic that an elder vampire should instill in all other vampires. The oral cavity should snap shut with enough force to sever tungsten, as an elder vampire, and in this case our MC is well in excess of 400 years old, is incomparably powerful to those in this game. In any normal time period in the world of darkness, pitting our MC, the Elder, against any other vampire in this game would be like putting a rabid grizzly bear with 75 pounds of cocaine coursing through its veins in a pit fight against a wheelchair-bound sausage dog. The only question to be answered in such a confrontation would be whether the bear would fuck the corpse pre or post mortem. And it's not even just the power differential either. Vampires that have lived that long have very little humanity left in them. They are monsters. They are the stuff of nightmares, even to the things that go bump in the night. And yet still, a humpbacked Nosferatu within easy strangling distance decides to actively sass that very elder vampire repeatedly. And my good Lord Cain, the sheer number of plot holes, failures, and lore inconsistencies, well, we would be here all night if I even tried to address them all, so let me stick to the big ones. As the abject failure to actually make you feel like an elder needs special consideration. See, your position as an elder is never used for anything it should be. An elder should command respect. They should be feared. Kindred politics in Seattle should revolve almost entirely around trying to manipulate you, to sweet talk you, to shift the power balance in the city in one of the group's favor. Say, for example, perhaps by using the elders' fish out of water lack of tech knowledge, for example. But wait, our elder interacts just fine with laptops, generators, and satellite uplinks with zero problems, but is baffled by a dictaphone. The age here is just another poorly used and barely understood plot point, and that is a big issue. If you are supposed to play as an elder vampire, that is a very specific experience that you need to deliver. And if you then choose to do nothing about it and instead produce just an underpowered regular vampire, the elder thing is only taking away from your story and adding nothing to it. And the combat too. The combat should be a power trip. You should be set up against dozens of enemies and have you cut through them like wheat, where the only real danger is being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. But there is none of that. A symptom of a wider malaise, namely that there are no vampires in this game. All of them are far too emotional. Max is a whining pussy bitch from beginning to end. Willem is motivated mainly by how much he misses his family. Katsumi is a bleeding heart that spends all her time in helping the Thin Bloods. And why not? As her primary opposition, the leader of the Camarilla, the new Prince Ryong, is so weak her own sheriff betrays her. Even the game's poorly concealed main villain is motivated not by lust for power, or blood, or ancient artifacts, or politics, or even Gehenna. She is motivated by love. By actual mother-humping love. I cannot pound this point home enough. The primary antagonist in a World of Darkness game is motivated by love. And if this was the only story in the game, that would have been bad enough, but No such luck, as the game's perhaps greatest flaw is the decision to marry the near exclusively combat-oriented gameplay as the Elder with the detective noir walking simulator gameplay, heavy quotation marks, of Fabian. The two styles go together like oil and water, like the virginity of young girls and mass immigration, like paradox and non-predatory DLC policies. Because the transition from one to the other is so abrupt, and odds are very good that if you enjoy the combat, you will not like being dragged away from it to walk from point A to point B whilst a wannabe detective flirts with a homosexual filing cabinet. No, seriously, that happens. And if you do, by some miracle, enjoy slow walking 400 meters just to be told to turn around and walk back again, then you're equally unlikely to revel in the brawly, Ritalin-fueled ADHD combat. This would actually have been better as two separate games, where both could be given the extra love and attention they so desperately require, as the two modes add virtually nothing to one another. The entire Fabian side quest ends by telling you something you already knew, in fact something the game shows you in the first 2 hours of gameplay. And if the Fabian sections were just an hour or two in total to set up some backstory, then very well. A tortured way to do it, but sure, alright. However, again, no such luck, as the Fabian sections run for something like 7 hours, 90% of which is utterly inconsequential to the main plot. It is pure padding. Presumably because if the Chinese Room delivered a 15 hours or less RPG, the sham of it being a role-playing game would have been even more obvious, but, well, it's not like they tried to make it an RPG to begin with, so if anything, a tighter, more focused playtime with less waffling would probably have strengthened the game. But I suppose an even shorter runtime would have made the $60 price tag even harder to swallow. Quite an achievement, as it already goes down about as smoothly as a viciously barbed cast iron cactus. And so, at the end of the day, the final conclusion can inevitably only be thus: Bloodlines 2 is not a good RPG. It's not a good World of Darkness game. It's not a good vampire game, and it sure as blood-laced shit is not a good Bloodlines game. In isolation, there are parts of the game that function alright. The combat is okay, and with a few crucial changes like adding more abilities, weapons, a more intricate melee system, and better impact feel, could have made for a pretty damn good combat system. But they did not add these things. The Fabian sections, likewise, do the noir style pretty well, and Fabian's dialogue is quite faithful to the feel. But the utter lack of any gameplay beyond exhausting one dialogue tree before walking 400 meters to exhaust another dialogue tree renders it all irrelevant, especially if you, like I did, prefer the combat, making the Fabian sections feel more like a punishment than a real additive feature, and never, ever commit the mortal sin of having a flashback in your flashback. The story overall, too, is mediocre at best and utterly forgettable, with none of the original's charm, and the characters, they are not worthy of licking the boots of the OG game's fantastic roster, not least of all due to the usual worn attractive characters. The characters in this game are studiously unappealing, with the only one that is even mildly interesting being, well, the main villain, of course. And they even removed one of the attractive characters from the trailer, for reasons unbeknownst to quite literally anyone. And Damsel, well, the weird thing is as well, the rumors is that the first Bloodline, created by Hardsuit Labs, so the first two, that is, not the original, was cancelled for being too woke. Which I can see, considering the personal politics of one of the old OG Bloodlines writers now, but if that is also true, and there is some evidence to suggest it, with Damsel, for example, which has been prettied up quite some bit, then why did they remove the one attractive character from the trailer and replace her with an uglier alternative character? Either way, the result is still the same. Even if the Chinese room had all the goodwill in the world, even if they genuinely tried, they were bound by too many limitations to ever have any hope whatsoever in actually producing a decent piece of entertainment. And in a world where you can get Bloodlines 1 for a sixth of the price of 2, there is simply no reason at all to even acknowledge the existence of Bloodlines 2. Final rating, a 3 out of 10. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.